first and foremost, I want to say that this guide is based off of my own preferences. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some other builds that you can do for a Holy Paladin. So there's pretty much 3, maybe 4 of them. You can go crit based, haste based, mastery based, or you can do a mix of all of them. So I'm going to talk about what I do, the pros and cons of each, and what I would recommend. I also want to say that this is not a theory crafting guide. I do not say 1 point of one stat is equivalent to another point of another stat or something. I don't do that. That fucking sucks. So, if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry, it's not going to be for me. So, real quick, we're going to be, just like on the side, we're going to be talking about the different Pally builds, talents and glyphs, gems and enchants, the buffs, tetrary stats, racials, important spells and cooldowns, the quote-unquote rotation, and how to improve upon your healing if you feel that you're lacking a little bit in some areas. So, first and foremost, the Pally builds. We're going to go ahead and start with the one that I use and the one that I think has the best sustained output to mana cost, and that is crit. The pro is the consistent high HPS, or healing per second, that crit can put out. It is actually pretty crazy. With the gear that I have right now, and I'm not too geared, I have item level 645, I can sustain about 40,000 HPS, which is phenomenal for the gear that I have. And we'll go into exactly all of my, not really stats, but my talent choices and glyphs and gems and everything like that. But I've tried all of them, mastery and haste, and I find that crit is coming out on top just about every time, every circumstance. A con, and this is going to be a con for all of them, I'm not going to say them for all of them, but is the gear optimization. If you're going for a crit build, then you need to have gear with crit on it. So even though that a piece of gear may have a higher item level, say an upgrade from a 630 heroic to a 655 or whatever the item level is, the item level may be a great increase, and they might have the solid stats of plus 15 intellect and all that other stuff that's the white thing on the gear. But when you're looking at the stats, and if you're building crit and it's mastery, and don't even get me started with the tetrary stats with multi-strike, it's not an upgrade, and you should not take it unless you're going for that all-around build, which in the end I feel is not that it's not viable, it's just not a good option to take if you're looking to do good healing output on a consistent basis, no matter what the boss is. So we'll go ahead and talk about the haste. A pro for haste is obviously you're going to get those quick heals. While it takes me about 1.9 to 2 seconds to cast a normal Holy Light, it may take you 1.5 or less seconds, and you're going to get more Holy Lights in per boss fight than I'm going to be able to, and it's going to be able to be when you need those quick fast heals just to get somebody back up real quick. The downside is they're not going to be as powerful in the long run. You're not going to heal as much in the long run because with the person getting crits, they're going to be healing double the amount while you're just healing the normal amount. Though you can get more in, you're also wasting more mana. So that is a con, is I find that haste is very mana inefficient. It's very hard to stay on top of your mana and still be able to produce the HPS that crit can. So though haste is it's viable, all these specs are viable, it's not on top. So if you like those quick casts, go for it. I mean, everybody, you can play all of them, but I recommend if you're looking for, again, that high output, go ahead and jump real quick. I want to go AFK and look at there. If you're going for that high output, haste is not going to be a consistent, not in my opinion, from what I've seen and what I've tried. So go ahead and go to mastery. So mastery for the paladins is a percentage of your heals are going to be transferred into a shield, which is fine, but unless you have enough mastery to make that shield worth it, it's pretty much fucking useless. The bosses in the raids hit so hard that that little bit of a shield isn't blocking any incoming damage. I mean, the boss is just going to tear through that, so it's really not going to be the best spec if you're one of the stronger healers. It's fine if you're blanketing the raid with AoE heals and kind of shielding up everybody a little bit, but as for the most part, until better gear comes out, Mastery is not really the best way to go, in my opinion. It can, however, be mana proficient if you use it right, and it does block some incoming damage, which is a pro, but at this point it's not going to be enough to cause a major difference from what I've seen with the gear level here. One of the major cons that I find with that, it's really hard to catch up as a Mastery spec. Yeah, you get the shields, but again, the bosses kind of tear through that, so unless you're spamming, you know, like Flash of Light, or, you know, I feel like you're not going to get enough shield and heal ratio to be able to catch back up on the heals if you get behind, and that's just how I see it. So my overall thoughts are every spec here is viable. You can build it any way you want. They all do work, and also it all depends on the comp that you're running with your raid, how well all the classes mesh together, what you actually need. But I know that some people say, you know, oh, priests and paladins are the bubble, the shield class. I don't see it that way. I don't see paladins really as the bubble class or the heal class, or the shield class with their heals. I recommend going crit. It's just sustained output every time, good mana control. I think it's just the best one overall. So we're going to go ahead and go into Townsend Glyphs. I'm going to go ahead and show you in game here. I'm not going to go over what every talent does. I'm basically going to tell you what I chose, a little bit of why I chose it, maybe what it does. So Speed of Light increases my movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. It's got a 45-second cooldown, but it's on demand use, and I don't have to worry about being in range like Long Arm of the Wall, where you have to judge, or the Pursuit, where you have the consistent 15% increase in movement speed, but you also get additional movement speed per holy power. Well, I don't have that much holy power most of the time. I'm almost always out. I have less than 3 almost all the time, so I'm not going to be seeing very big gains from that. And I like to have one of those oh shit buttons that I can press where something's coming down. I was in the middle of the heal and I wanted to finish off the heal to make sure someone didn't die, and I really need to get out of there really fast. I can go ahead and press Speed of Light. For the 30 tier, I do Fist of Justice. It's really going to be more dependent on if you need like longer CC in raids. We haven't really come across that yet. I don't like Blinding Light. Repentance, again, if you need that long CC. Fist of Justice is, in my opinion, the best choice, though a lot of the mobs that I find when we go into these raids are actually immune to it now, so it's really going to be up to you. All of them, to me, are pretty useless in the raid setting, because in the end you can't stun the boss. So for the 45, Selfless Healer is a piece of garbage, in my opinion, because you have to judge. If you get 3 judgments off, it does make the next Flash of Light heal, I think it makes it heal more, right? Increases the effect on others by 33%, so it increase or 35%. So it increases basically the amount that it heals, 35% times 3, and then it costs. It's free to cost, but when I'm raiding and we have all this damage coming in, I don't have time to 1, judge, and 2, keep up the judgment to stack it up to 3. There's a lot of movement in some of these fights, and there's a lot of AoE damage or a lot of burst damage that could be done on the tanks, and having one less thing to worry about judging, which is basically damage, not healing, just helps me overall. I don't want to use that global cooldown on judgment just in case for some reason I need to use the global cooldown for something else. I just don't see Selfless Healer as being a good, viable choice right now for any spec of Holy Paladins. Sacred Shield is also fucking garbage in my opinion. The shield absorbs up to 4,400 damage. 4,400 damage is nothing. Everybody takes so much damage that 4,400 damage, you're honestly not going to see anything off of that. And I've tried all of these. When I put the shield on them, it's like I didn't even put the shield on there. It's just a waste of a talent. So I take Eternal Flame. That's going to give you Word of Glory plus a hot heal over time on the target afterwards. The heal over time isn't that strong. When buffed up fully, it's about 1,200 per tick, so it's nice extra heal. Plus you can have it on multiple targets, and then those dots also affect the Beacon of Light target. So I think honestly for 45 that's the only choice. Going into level 60, you can take Hand of Purity if you want. It's going to decrease the damage taken by 10% damage over time by 80%, but it's only for 6 seconds. It is on a 30-second cooldown, which is really nice, but I'll tell you in a minute why I don't take that one. It should be pretty obvious in just a second here. Unbreakable Spirit, Divine Shield, Divine Protection, Lay on Hands reduced by 50%. So Lay on Hands is going to have a 5-minute cooldown. Really, I would only take this if I could use Lay on Hands twice in a fight. Very rarely will I be able to use it twice in a fight, because that means within a fight about 5, 6, maybe 7 minutes if it takes that long. Some fights are pretty long. I'd have to use Lay on Hands probably within the first minute or two, and really no one takes that much damage in the first minute or two because they still have all their defensives up, all of their cooldowns, so I'm not really too worried about that. The Divine Shield is pretty nice, but that's just going to be for yourself, obviously, so I wouldn't recommend it, because as a Holy Paladin, I'm healing, I'm not worried about DPSing, and yeah, there's some positioning that needs to be done, but I'm not really worried about overall damage being done to me. So one invulnerable shield within the 5 minutes, which is the boss fight, is usually good enough for me. And then of course the last one was the Divine Protection. I don't spec into the physical damage, it's just the magical damage, so it's a minute cooldown. A minute cooldown's not that long anyway, and also I'm avoiding damage for the most part as it is. So I don't really take that one because I don't see it being any more helpful to the spells that I already use. So I take Clemency, which gives me my hand abilities have 2 charges. Not really for Hand of Protection, though Hand of Protection can be used. I really don't use Hand Protection that much. I don't know exactly why. I mean, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think that most of the time there's not really an opportunity to where Hand of Protection would be the choice to go. But I do take it for Hand of Freedom, and then Hand of Sacrifice, which is going to reduce all of the damage taken by 30% for 12 seconds. It is on a 2-minute cooldown, but you get 2 charges. And this is why I don't take Hand of Purity, because it's 30% instead of that 10%, 8%, or 80%, but that's damage over time. I'm not really worried about the damage over time, I'm worried about the damage actually being done straight to them. So that's why I take Clemency, so I can have the Hand of Sacrifice times 2, and that's a total of 30%. So if the tank is just getting hammered and hammered and hammered, I could essentially have 30% reduction damage on that tank for 24 seconds if need be. But usually I alternate them, so for Impales there's always one up for an Impale, something like that. For the 75 talents, Holy Avenger is nice, I just prefer not to take it. It's good every 2 minutes, I guess, and then there's just so few moves that give you Holy Power. It's Holy Shock and the AoE one. The reason I don't know the AoE spells is because I barely even use the AoE spell. I think the AoE heals right now for the Holy Paladin suck really bad. Both the initial one giving you Holy Power and the one using Holy Power, I just think that they are very downscaled, and if they were buffed a little bit, then maybe Holy Avenger could be something to look at, but I don't think it's worth it right now. Holy Avenger is kind of nice if you use it in pair with Wings, or Avenging Wrath, so that way your Holy Shocks have a slightly better chance to, just basically the overall healing, because then you can blink at the raid with Eternal Flame. That's why. Divine Purpose is really nice, but it's an unreliable. I can't, if a burst is coming up and I know it's coming up, I can't prepare for it with Divine Purpose. It's just going to be random. It's the 25%. So that's why it's really nice, because you can get those proc chains where it's like 5, 6, 7 like procs in a row, but then you'll get those dry spouts where you haven't seen one all boss fight. Then you'll have Sanctified Wrath, which is what I'm taking. I'll tell you why. Because with Avenging Wrath, Sanctified Wrath, and a glyph, which I'm going to explain shortly, it pairs really well together. So this makes Avenging Wrath last 50% longer, and it grants access to one of your abilities more frequently. So basically reduces the cooldown of, in this case, Holy Shock, which is my main source of holy power generator, so that way I can put Eternal Flame on people. But it also increases the critical strike chance by 20%, which is huge because I'm crit based. Holy Shock already has a double chance to crit when used, and Avenging Wrath increases it by 20%, or in my case it's going to be 10%, which I'll explain in just a second. So that's with this and my Avenging Wrath, I already have a 30% chance to crit, which is going to be 60 stacked upon my base crit that I'm going to have buffed up. So it's almost always with Wings Up and Sanctified Wrath, my Holy Shock is almost always a crit. So when Holy Shock crits, you get the buff, I can't remember the name, but it reduces the cooldown of your Holy Light. So my Holy Light is about a 1.9 to 2 second cast. Well, with the crit, I can go ahead and cast it in 0.8 seconds. And when I have Wings Up with this, my rotation is pretty much going to be Holy Shock, Holy Light, Holy Shock, Holy Light, Holy Shock, Holy Light, and then I'll go ahead and do an Eternal Flame, and I'll just keep doing that until Wings is down. It's surprising by how much of an output. This is what really gets you up to that 40,000 HPS. Is this right here? You can do this every minute, and I'll explain that also in just a second if you don't already know how. Then we have the level 90 talents. I take Holy Prism because I can attack the boss, do that small little bit of damage, but its healing there's a lot of healing. It's really good healing. But also, people don't have to be completely stacked on top of each other. They can be spread out a little bit, which is why I choose it over Let's Hammer. It's also got a 20-second cooldown versus 1 minute. So Let's Hammer has a 1 minute cooldown, but for it to be really effective, everybody has to be kind of stacked up together for that duration, or else you're going to lose heals when people go out of it. It's very situational. There might be 1 or 2 bosses in High Mall, Blackrock Foundry in the future where you might want to take Let's Hammer for just that fight, but for most of the fights, I'm going to be taking Holy Prism. Execution Sentence is just, it shouldn't even be on there. That should be one of those talents that they switch out when you go to Holy to Ret, because it's really not worth it. It's single target damage or heals, and it bursts, maybe does a little bit of AoE damage. It's nothing worth taking. So Execution Sentence is completely out. For level 100, I'm not even going to go over the other two. You just take Beacon of Faith. You can Beacon of Light one tank, you can Beacon of Faith the other tank. It's amazing. That is what I have found so far to be the best case. So we'll go ahead and go to the glyphs real quick. For the major glyphs, we have Glyph of Beacon of Light. I like this one, so that way if I'm in the middle of the cast, I can go ahead and Beacon the Light a DPS if they're almost dead, just to get them a little extra heals, and then I can go ahead and Beacon of Light back the tank if I need to, so I can just kind of switch that off back and forth. I will sometimes, depending on what the fight is, switch it off with Glyph of Divine Protection. So Divine Protection, instead of reducing the magic damage by 40%, will increase magic damage by 20% as well as physical damage by 20%. But it all depends on the fight, so I'll switch that one out. Glyph of Hand of Sacrifice is something I'll never switch out, just because it no longer redirects that damage that the tank is taking at 30%, and it doesn't direct it to me. It just disappears. So that pretty much makes Hand of Sacrifice a pretty much straight up damage reduction, 30% for 12 seconds. So that is a must for me. And then this is where I'm talking about the Wrath kind of comes in. So Glyph of Merciful Wrath reduces the cooldown and the effect of Avenging Wrath by 50%. So real quick, we'll go ahead and say reduces the cooldown by 50%. Avenging Wrath is normally a 3-minute cooldown. My Avenging Wrath is 1.5, so that's the 50%. And then it reduces the effect of Avenging Wrath by 50%. So normally, on the 3-minute cooldown, the normal Avenging Wrath without this glyph, it's going to increase your healing done by 100%, which is fantastic, instead of 50, though 50 is still really good. And it's going to increase your critical strike and haste and critical strike and damage by 10% for 30 seconds. Well, the original one will increase it by 20%, this one will increase it by 10. So I take this because with the reduced cooldown of 50% at 1.5, Avenging Wrath lasts for 30 seconds. Okay, so essentially you're using it for 30 seconds and then you have a minute left on the cooldown, because it's 1.5, but it starts counting down as soon as you use it. So it's already counting down from, it says 2 minutes, but it doesn't say 1.5. So as soon as you use it, you're starting to count down from the 1.5. So that by the time that the Avenging Wrath runs out, it should say 1 minute left. So really every 1 minute you can have Wings Up. Now that means that every 1 minute with the talent of Sanctified Wrath, I have it last longer as well, and then it will allow me to have Holy Shock more often on that crit See, it's already at 50 seconds, so in 1 minute I can use it again. So every 1 minute I can increase the Holy Shock critical strike chance by 10% plus the additional 20% because it's already 20%. So really an additional 10% to my Holy Shock crit, as well as the cooldown of it being reduced by 50%. So what's really going to happen here is with wings active with these two, I'm going to use Holy Shock, and the cooldown is going to be about 2 seconds and 2.4 seconds or so. So it's pretty much going to be a crit. It's almost a guaranteed to crit. Very rarely does it not crit when I have wings up. So I'm going to Holy Shock. It's probably going to be a crit. I get that haste buff on my Holy Light, like I said before. I use that on a player. By the time I use that 0.8 seconds, the cooldown for Holy Shock is pretty much up. And with gear, it will be up. Once you get that haste up a little bit, but it will be up, and then you'll go ahead and Holy Shock, Holy Light, Holy Shock, Holy Light, Eternal Flame, Holy Shock, Holy Light, Holy Shock, Holy Light, and it's just an insane amount of heals that you can pump out every 1 minute. And when you time it with Bloodlust, it literally does not have a cooldown, but you don't want that Holy Light proc to go to waste. You want to use that, because if you don't, that's a 0.8 second Holy Cast, which is like that just, you lost that heal. So even with Bloodlust up and Wings up at the same time, when Holy Shock doesn't have a cooldown, it's on the GCD. Basically, you use it once all your spells are usable again, you can use it again. But it's going to crit with Bloodlust and Wings. It's guaranteed to crit. And so you're going to use that, and you're still going to do the same rotation, even though you can spam Holy Shock. You're going to do Holy Shock, Holy Light, Holy Shock, Holy Light. That way you can get rid of, you can continue to get those extra heals from Holy Light by the 0.8 seconds. So that's why I choose those ones. So those are my glyphs and talents. Gems and enchants are really easy. Gems, you're going to go based off of the build that you are building for your Holy Paladin. So if you're Mastery, it's recommended that you go Mastery gems. If you're haste, you're going to go haste gems. I'm crit, so I'm going to go crit gems. If you're that fourth weird spec that likes a mix of everything, you can do whatever the fuck you want, because I don't know what you're doing. So that's going to be up to you. Enchants, everything is going to be enchanted crit that can be enchanted. So rings, neck, and cloak are all going to be crit. The only thing that won't be crit is going to be the weapon. The weapon is going to be Mark of the Shadow Moon. The proc of the Mark of the Shadow Moon is the 500 Spirit, which lasts, I believe, 15 seconds, which is a long time to have 500 Spirit. So when that procs, and it procs pretty often, my mana pool goes up really fast, so I don't have to worry too much about mana in the long run, which is another reason why I like the crit spec, because you're getting that high output from the crit, the high HPS, and then this will proc, and then you get all that mana back, so you don't have to worry about going too much. The same thing can kind of work for haste, but you still work through your mana a little too fast for haste to be effective, because the spirit still can't really catch up with it. Meanwhile, crit, the haste with crit, the spirit enchant can catch up with it, and it can basically sustain your mana for a good while for each proc. And then I have the Winged Hourglass. I went ahead and bought that because it has the spirit proc as well, which is it doesn't proc as often, it seems, but they kind of alternate. Actually, the weapon will usually proc, and then when the weapon internal cooldown is going, the Winged Hourglass will usually proc. They very rarely proc at the same time, so it's kind of nice because it's pretty much a sustained increased spirit. And then of course I have the mana potions for the 34,000 instant mana, which you can use once per fight or once while in combat. So that's really the gems and enchants. That's all it is to that. For the buffs, again, you're going to eat food, which gives you the buff of whatever you're going for the build of. So if you're going haste master, you're going to eat haste master food. I am crit, so I eat crit food, which is going to be the Black Rock barbecue. And I will say this, that for the crit spec, once you get to about 40%, if the gear gets up there about 35-40%, I would no longer stack crit, because you're pretty much going crit to get that Holy Shock to always crit. Holy Shock is what you really want. That's your main holy power generator, and it's the one that's going to every crit give you that 0.8 second Holy Light. So as soon as you get it to just about every time that you use it without wings and it's critting, that's going to be a good indication where you can kind of start going either toward haste or toward mastery, whatever you would like. So those are the buffs. Going into the flasks, you're going to want the 250 intellect flask when you're going into the bosses. However, when you first go into the raids, you're not right at the bosses for the most part. You got some trash first. So I have about 400 of these excuse me, 400 of these minor intellect flasks, which are just the 200. So I'll use these for trash up until I get to the boss, and then I'll go ahead and use the 250 when we get to the boss, and then we'll start using 250 from then on out. It's just how I do it. You can do it however you want. Just because it takes a little bit more mats to make that 250, I want to make sure that it's going toward a boss right away, so that way you have that maximum uptime. Now, if you have the inn, you may get a quest that will award you this, was it Aurelius Whispering Crystal. Now, when you read this, it says increases stats, all stats by 200 for 1 hour. If you have this, this is going to be greater than using a 250 flask, for the sole purpose of the Whispering Crystal increases all stats, while the flask is only going to increase that one initial stat. This also, you can have food buff and everything with it, it just replaces your flask. So if you have this, use this right before the boss. The thing about this, and the caveat to it, is that it does have a 15-minute cooldown, and it does not persist through death. So if you die or you wipe, you're going to have to wait for that 15-minute cooldown if it's not up, and in the meantime you can go ahead and use a flask. So this comes from an inn, it's a quest in the inn. I was lucky enough to get it on one of my first quests. I'm not exactly sure how rare it is, but because it does all stats, this is going to be greater than a flask. Okay. So then we're going to go into the tertiary stats, tertiary, I don't know how to say it, so you can make fun of me if you want. Pretty much, this is going to be the fastest one. They're all bull, they're all fucking retarded, okay? Avoidance, you're not going to want avoidance. Leech, you're not going to want leech. Bonus armor, you're not going to want bonus armor. Multi-strike increases the chance that your heal will, let me read it so I don't get in trouble here. Grants, grants 4% chances to deliver extra attacks or heals for 30% of the normal value. So, I have 4%. 30% of the normal value. That's good, but it's not great. And it's only a 4% chance, though you could stack it. I'd rather stack crit and like haste than I would do multi-strike. I just think multi-strike is kind of worthless right now. They don't give you enough multi-strike to make it worth it. And then you have versatility, which pretty much increases straight up healing, increases damage and healing done by a certain percentages, increases the damage taken. Again, there's not enough versatility on any of the gear to where you can make it where it's worth the straight up percent increase to healing, in my opinion. So I think that all of the third level stats are complete garbage, and I don't even bother with them. If you want to go for them, that's fine. With this guide, I'm telling you, don't worry about them. They're useless. Racials, active and passive, they won't make or break it. You should choose a character that you don't mind looking at. I like cheeseburgers, so I chose a cow. So, also I like how Torn's armor is bigger than everybody else's. I just like that. So that's why I chose Torn. Blood Elves do have a nice active racial passive where they can get an extra holy power every 2 minutes, but it's really not going to make or break anything, and if it does, something's wrong. It's not going to be good, so don't worry about racials. So okay, we'll go ahead and go over important skills or important spells and cooldowns real quick. So of course I talked about Hand of Sacrifice. It reduces the amount of damage taken by 30% for 12 seconds. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Why it's important. Avenging Wrath, Wings, increases again your healing done by 50% or 100% depending on how you glyph, and increases your haste and critical strike chance and damage by 10% or 20% for 30 seconds, or depending on how you glyph. Okay, so the way that I have it spec'd, it's up every 1 minute, so I can time that pretty well with any bursts that the bosses have with Bloodlust, so it's going to be pretty productive. And then you have your Hand of Protection, your Freedoms, and your Divine Protection. These should all be self-explanatory. Damage reduction, freedom, you can get out of movement impurities, so that way you can get around the room and you don't get hit by something. Hand of Protection, if you need to quickly shield somebody but you don't have time to heal them right away, then you can go ahead and do that. And yeah, this is a Japanese ad right here. This is what happens when you're in Japan. Let me go ahead and turn that off. Okay. Lay on Hands instantly grant the target 100% of their health. You can see why that's important. Holy Shock, we already talked about Holy Shock. Seal of Insight is going to be a straight up 5% increase to your heals, so this should always be up. Seal of Command, don't even fucking worry about it, you're not shock it in, so it doesn't matter. Ignore the second part of Seal of Insight, you just care about that 5% increase to heals. The second part is stupid. Eternal Flame, the initial heal, and then the hot, so we'll go a little bit more into that in the rotation, which is next. Trinkets on use. If you have trinkets that you have to use, make sure you put them on your bars, or make sure you put them in a macro, and make sure you actually use them. If you have a spirit increase active, I recommend doing it at 70 or 75% of your mana, because if you do it at 20% of your mana and you haven't done it at all up until that point, say you were able to do it twice before you even got to 20% mana, well, and it increases 10% each time, you would be at 40% at that point in time in the fight if you used it. So make sure to set benchmarks, as I like to say, at percentages of your mana where you'd like to use it. So I like, if I have active spirit trinkets, I like to set it at 75%. Once I hit 75% mana, no matter what, I go ahead and click it. Usually it's going to be a 2-minute cooldown, and then once that cooldown is off, if it's 50% or 40%, I'll go ahead and hit it again, just so you can have that consistent mana back. You don't want to wait till the last minute and be like, I'm out of mana, I need spirit. If you use it throughout the whole time, that point is going to be pushed back till later in the fight. And then Beacon of Light, you're going to go ahead and Beacon of Light and Beacon of Faith, both tanks. That's pretty much how it's going to work. So we're going to go a quick rotation, and we are almost done here. So before you start the fight, you want to have Beacon on both the tanks. And then you're going to max out your holy power at 5/5. So right as the pull is taking place, you want to go ahead and target that tank, that main tank that's pulling. As soon as they pull and they take that initial damage, you're going to go ahead and put the Eternal Flame on them, and then you're going to immediately push Holy Shock on that same tank who's still taking damage, and then you're going to have 3 Holy Power again. With that 3 Holy Power, you're going to go ahead and use Eternal Flame on the second tank. From that point on, you're going to go ahead and spam and just use Holy Light on one of the tanks, whatever one's taking the most damage at the time, and you're going to use Holy Shock on cooldown to other people in the raid. If you get a crit on the Holy Shock, you're going to use Holy Light on somebody else in the raid that's not a tank who has taken damage. That will essentially give you a 0.8 cast Holy Light, and it's going to heal 3 people. The person that you healed, that took the damage for 100% of the heal, and then a percentage to the tanks. The reason you can get away with, while no one's really taking too much damage, spamming Holy Light on one of the tanks is because they have Beacon, and with Beacon on them, you get some of that mana returned to you when you use that. So with that, every time that you get 3 Holy Light, you're going to go ahead and use Eternal Flame on a target. You're going to go ahead, there's a priority, you're going to use it on the main tank first, and then you're going to use it on the off tank, which is going to happen right at the pull. The third person you're going to use it on almost always is going to be yourself, because it increases, you actually get healed more when Eternal Flame is on you than when it's on other targets. So when you're taking more heals on you, that percentage of heal is greater going to those tanks that are beacons. So that's why you want it on you over somebody else. If you're getting ticked for 2,000 and then the other target that you could possibly put it on is only getting ticked for 1,000, the tanks are going to get a higher percentage of that 2,000, so they're essentially getting healed more. That's why you're going to go third. From that point on, you're going to keep it refreshed on the tanks and yourself at all times, and then if you find that yourself, when you pop wings and you're using Holy Shock, pretty much every GCD, and you get those holy power flowing in, you can just start blanketing the raid with it. Obviously the most damage first. I prefer to put it on melee most of the time, because they seem to be the ones that take the most damage, because there's so much stuff going on in that general area. Range can usually avoid it, but obviously it's going to depend on the situation and your raid of who you put it on. But it's always going to be main tank, off tank, yourself, and then from that point on, if all 3 of them have it, you can go ahead and start putting it on somebody else. Again, wings will be on a 1-minute cooldown. Don't be fooled, it says 1.5, but it's up for 30 seconds. So by the time wings actually falls off of you, there's only a minute left. So use that to your advantage. And then the last section is going to be how to improve your healing if you still feel that you're falling behind a little bit. Practice, practice, practice. Fear does come into play at a certain point, but a lot of it before that is going to be your understanding of your character, your class, your spells, how they interweave with each other, and how the boss fights actually work. So if you want to reduce the amount of healing, you want to do, I mean, you want to increase your output, but overall you don't want to heal that much. The less damage the raid takes, the better off. So just plan for those impales that are coming from bosses. Sack, you know, the tank when the impale comes out. That's an increase or reduce 30% damage from the impale, and it's huge. Honestly, healing is like a dance. You have to get into the groove. You have to kind of feel it, and then once you kind of get into it, it's just a pattern. Once you find that pattern, your pattern, you can go ahead and you're just going to notice that your heals are going to start going up and up and up as you know, and you start feeling when spells are coming off cooldown without having to look at them, when cooldowns are off, and then you know when to use them. You're planning it right. So again, practice, know the fights, know your class. That's the most important part. Gear is going to come second. I've out-geared people with crappy gear before. It's just because I know what I'm doing. I've been playing a Holy Paladin since the release of World of Warcraft. So practice. That's number one. Two, you can use programs such as World of Logs. World of Logs is an amazing program that I'm going to go ahead and make a separate video with later. But it allows you to analyze everything that happened in the raid, whether it be tanking, healing, DPS, and it writes it to a text file so it doesn't bog down your system while you're actually raiding, and it actually uploads fairly quickly. With it, you can see how often you use certain spells, how often those spells crit. But the best part about it is if you find that you're lacking in heals, you can compare yourself to other healers, and you can see if it's the priority of spells that you're using or if it's the actual gear. So I'm being beat out by some Holy Paladins, and I'm looking at our spells. We use most of our spells about the same amount of time. The only difference is that I'm 645 and they're 680, 690. So looking at what they're using and the order in which it's ranked, so they used Holy Light the most, they use this the most, they use this most. Mine are in the same order because we have the same pretty much rotation and feel for it, but they're getting more HPS because their gear is better at that point. But you may notice that one healer, and this works for all healers, it doesn't have to be a Holy Paladin, or it could work for a DPS or a tank, that they're using a certain DPS, a certain dot, or a certain spell overall more than you are, and you're noticing that they are way higher on either the DPS or HPS charts. And then you can find out where you stand with using that spell, and maybe you can go ahead and work that more into your rotation, so you are now aware that you're not using that spell maybe on cooldown, or you're not using it at the right time. So it just lets you kind of see yourself against other people and compare how often you use the spells, and overall it allows you to make those changes that are necessary that you wouldn't normally know that you're doing anything not necessarily wrong but different from other healers. So that's why I really like World of Warcraft. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a video later of how to set it up and how to go through it and all of that other things. It's a huge program, so that's all I'm gonna talk about it for now. Use add-ons with a purpose. Make sure that they don't clutter your screen. So I use Bartender because Bartender makes my screen a little bit more fresh. I don't like having bars all over on this side, over here, on the right side. I like everything right here where I can see it. I just have one area to focus on. I use an add-on called Click. I almost said K. CLIQUE. This basically allows me to keybind spells to my mouse by just clicking over them, and I can click a number. I have a Razor Naga, so I have the 12 buttons on the side plus, you know, left, right, middle click buttons. So what Click allows me to do is hover over someone's portrait here, and I can left click and that's Holy Light. I can right click and that's Flashlight. So again, this goes into the practice. Once you get that set up, go into looking for raid. Nothing is better practice than looking for raid because people fucking suck at looking for raid. They don't give a shit what they're doing. They're just standing there whacking the boss, AFKing, watching something else. So you're going to get a good feel of where your buttons are, and that's the best way to learn because no one cares. They're not trying to avoid damage. So you can heal that up, and you can get a feel for your mouse, your keybinds, change them around how you see fit. Let's see here. Research obviously the fights beforehand so that way you know exactly what you do. And one of the last things is going to be comms, communication. If you are raiding with somebody in a guild and you're not using Razor, comms, Skype, Vent, not saying that you're not going to be able to do it, you're going to have a more difficult time to do it. Nothing is worse than seeing two Resto Druids use Tranquility at the same time. Yeah, they healed everybody up to 100%, but one of those tranquilities probably could have did the same thing, and then you still had a big cooldown that you could have used later for more raid damage. That's why when I'm in not Skype, but when I'm in Vent with my guild and we're raiding, usually someone will call out if they're going to use Tranquility, and I'll avoid using my wings at that time because there's no point, because they're already going to be nearly to full health, and I can just supplement with my other spells without using a cooldown. Then once Tranquility is over, with the next raid damage, I know it's on cooldown, I know he's not going to use it, then I can use my cooldown, so that way we can go ahead and basically sustain those heals to keep everyone alive. Okay, so basically coordinate with your raid. So that's all I have here for the Holy Paladin guide. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Go ahead and leave those in the comments below. If you would like to subscribe and follow and share this video, that would be amazing. I've just started making these videos, so please feel free. In the description below is also the link to my live stream. It's twitch.tv/gruffwow. There I'm going to be doing the raids that we do, challenge modes, as well as League of Legends, and we're going to be doing, I just got beta access to the new Blizzard game, so I'm going to be doing some of those. I'm going to be doing some giveaways with game cards and for RP for League of Legends and game time for World of Warcraft and stuff like that. So please go ahead and like and subscribe. If you want to see future videos, go ahead and leave those in the comments below, and I'll go ahead and try to make those videos. Alright, have happy holidays.